Welcome to the Thrive Careers Podcast, the show that helps you move your career confusion to career success, hosted by the extraordinary Olajumoke Fatoki. Each episode is packed with expert insights, real-life stories, and practical strategies to help you land your dream job, level up, and build a career you love. No more guesswork, just clear, actionable steps to help you thrive. If you're ready, let's jump right into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Thrive Careers Podcast. I am your host, Olajumoke Fatoki, and I'm so excited about today's episode because it's for everyone who has ever thought it's too late for me to pivot or where am I going with my career? And guess what? I'm happy to let you know that today we are here to help you change that narrative and help you see that you can start again. It doesn't matter how far gone you are in the journey. And today we have an amazing guest in the house, Katie O'Malley. Katie, could you please introduce yourself briefly and tell us about your background so that our audience can get to meet you? Thank you.
Absolutely. I am so delighted to be here and have been looking forward to seeing you again ever since our first chat. As you shared with your audience, my name is Katie O'Malley. I am the founder and principal coach of Encourage Coaching. But before I launched this business in 2018, I was a bit of a career nomad and had more of what I would call a career portfolio than making my way up a career ladder. But with that said, the one thread that pulls all the way through my career is this driver of altruism and wanting to make a difference in the world, have a positive impact in my communities, and really support the people that are closest to me or within that kind of social network. And so started off my career working in politics in 2004 for Senator John Kerry as he was running for president against George W. Bush. And it was an incredible experience, Ola. And I tell folks that until I founded Encourage Coaching and became a small business owner, that was the hardest I ever worked in my entire life. 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. And at the end of that campaign cycle, to not have a job, any prospects, any healthcare, I realized that the field of politics and campaign work didn't provide enough stability and security for me. And so I transitioned into the nonprofit sector, spent about 10 years working for organizations like the Innocence Project in New York City and the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, again, pulling that thread of altruism into that work. And as I'm sure many folks listening can appreciate, it's hard to live in New York City or any big city on a nonprofit salary. And I really thought that was the reason I was feeling a sense of dissatisfaction and disengagement in my career, that it was about the compensation. And I saw a lot of my friends having a lot of great success in commercial real estate and thought, my gosh, if they can do it, why can't I do it too? But had I visited with a career coach or career counselor before I made that move in 2010, they would have said, Katie, there's a values discrepancy here that you might want to investigate between what really motivates you and where your strengths and talents lie in this particular industry. I didn't do that. And on the very first day, I knew I had made the wrong move. But as someone who was raised in the Midwest of the United States, where we have a very strong work ethic and very much a grit it, don't quit it mentality. I wasn't one for without giving something a try, and also was raised to never quit one job until you have another one lined up. And so during the 3.5, almost 4 years that I was there, it took a really significant toll on my mental health, because what we know from the research is that when our feelings and thoughts are not aligned with our behaviors, and our feelings and thoughts can come out of misalignment with our behaviors when we're not really leaning into our strengths, talents, and values, it can create a crisis in terms of our mental health. And that's exactly what happened for me. And in 2012, ended up taking a medical leave of absence from work for my mental health and well-being, which at the time, in the States, we were hardly talking about mental health, much less an employer's responsibility to their employees to kind of protect and not create extra harm for that mental health. And realized during my medical leave believe in going through some treatment and recovery programs that I was not the only person struggling with this crisis of identity and career. And that's when I decided to go back to school at 30 and get my master's degree in counseling so I could help people at the intersection of mental health and work. That goal was thwarted by insurance companies in the United States because they are not keen to cover therapy sessions about work because work is not a mental health diagnosis. And so I finished the graduate degree. So I have my master's degree in counseling, but instead of going for licensure as a counselor, decided to pivot into coaching so I could help folks the way that I really, really wanted to help them, which was at that intersection of work and well-being. Spent the next 10 years working in higher education with students in their career and leadership development at institutions like the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Chicago, Chicago Booth School of Business. And yeah, it was incredible. And obviously fulfilling that deep need of altruism, but it's a very small segment of the population that gets to access the incredible education and services offered by institutions of that caliber. And that's when I launched Encourage Coaching in 2018 to make these exceptional career and leadership development services accessible to everyone. And that's how I get to be here with you today.
You have such an impressive background. I'm excited that you can join us today because we have, similar things that we do, passionate about people and, just helping them get it right in the area of work, their career. It looks like all your life, all your journey has prepared you for this conversation. Like I said in my opening, so many professionals feel trapped by the idea that they've invested so much time in one career path to then begin to start thinking of making a change. Why do you think this belief is so common and how did you come to challenge it in your own work?
Absolutely. I really believe you used the word narrative at the beginning when you were introducing this episode. And I think the narrative that so many of us have been fed was pick a field when you are 18, 19, 20 years old, specialize in that field, and then do this for the next 40 years, 50 years. I don't know. For some of us, it might be 60 years, depending on how our retirement accounts look and what happens to the economies across the world. But what's so interesting about that is our brains as humans aren't even fully developed until we're 25 years old. So we are being asked to make decisions about truthfully the rest of our lives and how we want to spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day for the rest of our lives before we even fully know ourselves and know what all the possibilities are. So we get mired in this thinking of, I invested 4 years studying this in college. Now I've invested another, let's just say 4 years working in this field. This is what I have to do for the next 40 years. And it's just absurd because there are so many skills that you can take from any role, any field that is not highly specialized, right? So you can't say, all right, I have been working as a customer success manager and now I'm going to go be a brain surgeon, right? We're not talking about pivots like that, but thinking about in your role, what are the concrete skills, whether those are technical skills, whether those are leadership skills, or what I like to call power skills, formerly called soft skills. There is nothing soft about them. They are incredibly difficult to implement effectively. And looking at that set and saying, all right, let me cultivate a portfolio around this to really start to look at what are the other possibilities for me, and taking those blinders of field, role, what you thought you wanted to do at 18, but now you're 32. And obviously a lot has changed in your life. And I would say for folks out there who are worried, there is a huge push right now in a variety of industries to start moving towards skill-based hiring. So instead of just looking at where a person has been before, what are the skills that they've developed and what can we now train them to do within our framework. And so that's really heartening for me as a coach to see as I'm working with folks, whether they are 22 or 52, saying, Katie, help me figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I cannot do this thing anymore. And knowing that there's lots of options out there.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, for taking us through that journey. And I love where you took it from, the fact that I said what changing narrative. And that's exactly what you've been able to do. Because when you started, it just looks like a lot of people, a lot of us have been programmed about how our career journey is supposed to be without really factoring a lot of things. You live in a rapidly changing world, and it will be wrong to stay stuck in the old ways of doing things. And you mentioned something, skill-based hiring is what it is right now. So, that's why I know that this conversation is very timely. Moving forward, we're going to be talking about the concept of career ladder, which is one of the focus, of our conversation today. And I know that that's something that you also, love to talk about, moving from a career ladder mindset to building a career portfolio. So can you break down what that really means and why it is so crucial in today's world of work?
Yeah, so a couple of things are coming up for me right away, Ola. And the first being not everyone wants to climb a ladder. Some people
Right.
I've had a number of clients say to me, Katie, the next stop on this ladder for me, the next step is VP or president or senior director. But I need to tell you, I don't want to do that. I like what I'm doing right now, or I like engaging in direct service. And if I take this role, then I'm not going to get to do the work anymore. I'm going to have to lead a team and lead them to do the work, but I still want to do the work. And the first thing I always say is that is okay, as long as what you're doing is providing you a sense of financial security, career security. It is okay to not want to climb that ladder. So that is the very first thing I want to say. Not everyone wants to make it or be in the C-suite. And I want to normalize that for folks. The second piece that I think is really important is if we think about a ladder, the ladder is broken for a lot of people from the jump. So one of the best examples that I have of this is the career ladder for women, the very first rung to the second rung. So you get a job out of school, right? And it has now been 2 years and it's time for promotions for all of those folks who have been working for around 2 years. And that first promotion, what ends up happening, Ola, what the research shows from McKinsey and Lean In is that for every 100 men that get promoted, only 81 women get promoted in that first cycle. And this gets perpetuated for every promotion cycle, which is why we start to see quote, less qualified women promotable into those types of positions because fewer are getting promoted at the same rate as men, even though the qualifications are the same. And so what I would challenge employers to think about from a quote ladder perspective is how are you calibrating the ladder and equalizing it for everyone? And this does not take into account other factors of identity, right? We're talking about the one social identity of gender. How are you calibrating that and equalizing your promotion process to ensure there are enough qualified candidates of both genders at the top so we can see more parity so the other reason I'm not a fan of the ladder is that it's broken for most people. So that's number 2. And then number 3, things that we know how to do, which include one of the most important things, which is learn. You're going to have to learn something new, no matter what job you go into, even if it's in the same field, even if it's for the same company, you're going to have to learn something new. So what I always challenge my clients to think about is whether they're like, Katie, it's too late. I'm going to be 30. I'm going to be 40. I'm going to be 50. I'm like, well, you can either be 30 with a new set of skills. You can be 40 with a new set of skills or a new degree, 50 new set of skills or new degree. That number is going to hit and you're going to reach that age no matter what. And you can either reach it with a portfolio or a resume that has been upskilled and reskilled, or you can just stay in your silo. And the way that we are seeing development happen, particularly with AI, the more robust someone's skill set is in terms of reach, the more effective and the better chance that they are going to have of surviving the jobs that AI is coming for. And it is coming. I wish I could be more of an optimist about it, but the truth is with artificial intelligence, much like any new technology that has come to pass, whether it was electricity, the printing press. At the end of the day, as humans, people in power still have the choice to say, here are the jobs we're going to protect, and here are the jobs that we are going to let the printing press or electricity or AI take over. It is a choice. And so we don't know. And most of us are not in the position where we get to contribute to how those choices are made. And the best bet right now is to deepen those uniquely human skills that only we can have and figure out which industries are going to reward you for developing those. And so when we talk about a career portfolio, it's how are these skills transferable? So for me, going from politics into nonprofit, right? What were the skills that were transferable there? From nonprofit into commercial real estate, which when I first made that pivot, they're like, what are you even doing here? And then from commercial real estate into counseling, education, and now as a small business owner, all of those experiences set me up to do what I'm doing today. There was nothing left behind, nothing thrown out. It all came with me to help make me successful doing what I'm doing today.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with you, on that. And I must say, I think you're such an adventurous person. Making that huge jump from politics to nonprofit, I think, that's a level of open-mindedness. And I just wanted to call that out. And you said a lot of things, that felt like an entire masterclass already. It was incredibly enlightening. And I love where you started from, the sense making that statement that guess what, everybody doesn't necessarily have to desire to climb the ladder. I think that's a narrative that we are changing. That's just going to lead me to my next question, which is a lot of people really want to make that move, but they don't know how to because they are stuck in where do I start from? 10 years on this journey, and they're just there and hoping that by some stroke of luck, they will be able to move past that stage. But so, do you want to tell us how professionals can reframe the fear of losing their past experience when considering a pivot?
Absolutely. And it takes a complete shift in your mental model, right? Because as we talked about in the beginning, we have been socialized to believe there's one way forward, there's one path. Once we start on that path, that's where we need to keep going. And so being able to question and find data, right, to prove that wrong. Because I got to tell you, most people are staying in a job for 2 to 3 years right now at most before they make a change. So let's just put that out on the table. The rare bird now is the person who is staying somewhere for 10 plus years. Even though in the current labor market we are in, I do encourage folks who are not experiencing trauma in the workplace or who are not afraid of or not experiencing trauma, not afraid of being let go, stay where you are for now. Do not make a move too quickly. That's going to be the better bet. But to start reframing that mindset and looking at what are the things that I consistently receive positive feedback around in terms of my talents, my deliverables, my strengths, and then thinking about how do I want to spend 8, 10, maybe 12 hours out of my day, sometimes weekends, sometimes evenings or early mornings. What is going to make it worth it for me when that alarm goes off to say, yes, I'm putting both feet on the ground and not hitting the snooze button? Because the answer to where you can go next is really at the intersection of those two questions. Where do people experience me operating at my best and brightest? What are those tasks, responsibilities, deliverables? And what gets me excited to wake up every day? And it is starting there and starting to generate possibilities from that space. Now, I will say, I work with clients on this in a variety of ways, and there are some people who are resistant to that exploration. If you are resistant to that exploration, I would say a couple of things. One, you may not be ready to make that leap because the uncertainty is too scary. Also, okay. but that would be your opportunity to enlist someone to be a helper in it. We have not been trained on how to explore career paths or to make pivots. It's been a failure, truthfully, I believe, of the higher education system, at least in America, preparing folks to be career ready and to understand what it is they need to do throughout their career to continue to be productive and successful and engaged. So let me pause there because I've just said a lot of things, but it's to get started, it's really understanding those two pieces. Where are other people experiencing me as strong and talented? And I say others because we tend to be our own harshest critics, right? And so we might not want to accept some of the things that we are really good at. And if I can take us on a short trip back to when I was in middle school, high school, even in college, people would tell me all the time, Katie, you need to be a counselor, high school counselor, middle school counselor, go be a therapist. And Ola, in my mind, I'm like, it's not important enough. It's not meaningful enough. It's not big enough, just helping one person at a time. But wouldn't you know, all of them were right. And the place that I have found the greatest success, the greatest joy, and the greatest financial satisfaction was when I tilted into that. Also knowing what would get me excited to get out of bed every morning is being my own boss and setting my own targets and testing out my own things. And that's where I found what I'm doing now.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And for me, what I hear you say is really identifying that thing that makes you special. And sometimes you've had people in your life who would have given you compliments on those things that come natural to you. You understand your areas of strength. And I want us to now take that, further, because sometimes it doesn't just end at knowing what you're good at. You have to become very skilled at it as well, because there are a lot of people who can do what you're doing. The skill level is probably what is going to make the difference. So I want us to talk about upskilling and reskilling. And I know that sometimes it can really feel overwhelming, especially for those that are considering a pivot, having built a set of skills for maybe a number of years. So what practical steps do you recommend for someone who wants to future-proof their career without necessarily starting from the scratch?
Yeah. A couple of things. One, if we want to future-proof our career, we all need to be upskilling and reskilling constantly. And another way to say that is just lifelong, continuous learning, whether that's in a particular field, a type of role. But what I would also say is, again, that idea of what gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning. Because if you're going to invest the time, effort, and energy, which is when we think of, there's two scarce currencies for us right now, other than money. One is time, the other is our attention. And if you're going to invest the time and attention in upskilling or reskilling, I would also say it better be something that you are curious about at minimum or deeply interested in, because otherwise it's going to be a slog every step of the way. So one thing I will never do, and I explored this and quickly was like, oh gosh, no, I became really interested in behavioral science, right? And how we can make decisions based upon data sets, tying people's behaviors into something that was more quantitative, less qualitative. And then came statistics and math and regression models. And I was like, no, I can't do this, right? But I think my time, energy, and effort is going to be better invested learning something else. And that was part of the reason why I chose to get my master's degree in counseling, recognizing that one of my natural talents was listening. And a master's degree is essentially a 3-year degree in learning how to actually listen, not what we think listening is, but how to actually listen. And for me, when prospective clients ask me what differentiates you, from other coaches, I'm like, I spent 3 years learning how to listen and really intuiting and developing confidence in understanding what it was I was hearing and being able to relay that back to somebody in a new way to create a light bulb moment or some illumination for them. And figuring out where are those places that you have the natural talents and where is the next place that field where those talents are most often used going. That's
Amazing.
your investment.
Amazing. 3 years studying how to listen to people.
Essentially, yeah. And how to listen to yourself, right? Because whether I'm here with you or a client or a friend or a family member, I still have all of my lenses, my perspectives. And so as I'm listening to someone else tell me their stories or challenges or successes, I also have to be listening to what's happening in my body, my mind, in order to be effective and make sure I am not leaning into assumptions or judgments, and remaining in that place of curiosity and dignified respect.
I think that's really powerful. And thanks for sharing that with us. So, you also talked about confidence. What advice do you have for clients who struggle with confidence when thinking of making a big shift, especially those that are in mid career levels? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, this is the tough one, especially for clients that I have who are at that pivot point, and don't feel confident that there's going to be space for them. One of the things I encourage folks to think about is if you are making a big pivot, chances are you're going to have to make that shift in a parallel way or potentially move backwards a little bit. But again, if we can think about it more as a collection of skills and less about a ladder, it's not about moving back. This becomes additive, right? And so when I decided to leave commercial real estate, go back to school, the first job that I took after I finished that graduate program sent me back to a salary that I had been earning in 2000. What year would that have been? That I was earning in 2010, and it was now 2015, right? And I had just graduated with a degree, but it was a new field. So even though I had all of this experience, the employer was like, you don't have any experience in this field, so we're starting you at this salary. And part of it is recognizing first, that's not a value judgment on you. This is just where you are in understanding this particular field, and operating in this role. So, not looking at salary as your actual value in terms of what you're bringing to the table, but also being willing to accept that's likely going to be the case if you're making a big pivot. Now, what I'll say is 10 years later, I've 10x'd that salary for myself in a way that I never would have been able to do if I had stayed at commercial real estate, nonprofit, or politics, right? And so we have to think about our career. I always say we can have a long-term goal that we're going to write in pen for ourselves, but being able to sketch out the rest in pencil, erase, make a turn, and stay open to the opportunities that are in front of you, again, to help you really increase not just the skill, but your confidence in that particular field or that type of role. And so, yes, I understood I was taking a step back in pay, but I also understood accepting a job offer from the University of Texas at Austin would set me up to then be a viable candidate at an institution like the University of Chicago and Chicago Booth School of Business, two sets of credentials that then would make me credible to prospective clients if I were to become a small business owner. And so it's thinking about it more holistically. So many folks that I work with, and rightly so, in a lot of ways, get hung up on compensation. And yes, that is a number, and we live in a capitalist society, and the amount we earn determines the level to which we can participate and what kind of power that we have. But if you can tolerate staying at the same level or taking a reduction for a couple of years in order to see what's going to happen for you long term, that's also what I encourage people to think about. Don't think about the $10,000 difference for the next 2 or 3 years. Think about the 10x salary difference you can achieve by being in a field that you want to be in and really focusing on developing that expertise. I moved a bit away from confidence, but money and confidence, I find for a lot of people, are very much tied together.
I love, that approach that you brought into it. And I heard you say staying nimble and being open-minded. and sort of understanding where you are right now and plotting your graph to where you want to be and not just focusing on the moment, because that's what you were able to achieve with your story. So as we round off this core conversation for today, I have one final question, and I want you to share a favorite client success story of someone who has embraced this career portfolio mindset and how that has been able to transform their career.
One of my favorite clients, her name is Brittany. She came to me during the height of the pandemic. Social worker, right? And social workers in the United States are woefully, respectfully underpaid, right? And she had incredible talent. She was brilliant, a great leader, great communicator, hard worker. And it was just this disconnect of, but I have to suffer for this work to be good, and really helping to transform that mindset of, no, you don't have to suffer. You have to be well so you can help the people that are struggling and suffering, and really helping her to see all of the skill sets that she had developed by becoming a licensed clinical social worker. She could actually parlay into the for-profit sector for a startup that was actually helping folks to access support and care that they needed, but it was a for-profit. And when the blinders came off and she could see the impact and the positive impact this was having, my gosh, she started applying for roles in educational technology and the kind of mental health social impact startup space, and was able to nearly triple her salary in one move, and just couldn't believe what a significant change that was going to have on her life, and to be rewarded for that brilliance, for that advocacy on behalf of the client, instead of punished over and over again without getting raises, promotions, cost of living adjustments. Yeah, it was incredible to see that unfold for her, but she had to be open to experiencing a different perspective of what is out there versus the narrative that she had been sold.
That's powerful. And I think that's one thing that keeps, coming again and again in our conversation today, that ability to be nimble, to be open-minded. And thank you for sharing that brilliant story with us. Thank you so much, Katie. It's been refreshing. It's been enlightening, speaking with you today on the podcast. And just before we let you go, of course, we want to get a bit into your personality. And no, so when Katie is not coaching, what are you doing?
Yes. So you can find me on my Peloton bike. So if you have a Peloton and you ever want to ride together, I'm Courageous Kate on the leaderboard. Big fan of Robin and Allie. So you can always find me there. For those of you who might be watching this on video, you probably saw two dogs roaming in my background. You can also find me on walks with them, or at our favorite dog park, or playing fetch. And I think the third piece is I'm actually in a lot of my downtime working on perfecting my TEDx talk, which is going to be happening on June 30th in Boston. So yeah, it's work, but it's something that when we talk about the investment, making the investment to upskill and reskill, really focusing in on those public speaking, presentation skills, and really just wanting to knock this out of the park. So also seeing me standing in front of a mirror with Post-it notes everywhere, trying to memorize this script, because you're not allowed any notes on stage.
Jen, that must be so much work, but congratulations to you. So what's one piece of career advice you've received on your career journey that has really been helpful to you?
So when I first started Encourage Coaching, I had a client share with me, take care of the clients that you have. You don't need a fancy marketing plan. You don't need fancy graphics or imagery. Take care of the clients that you have and treat them like gold, and more will come. And as someone who was reluctant to learn how to sell, which I have now since developed that skill to be able to do, at the time it was so comforting to me, but it also worked, and it helped me establish a strong foundation for the business from which I could grow it. So that was probably the best piece of advice.
And thank you so much once again, for joining us today. So what would be your final words as we round up finally on this session?
Would tell your audience to stay optimistic. Stay optimistic about your career, stay optimistic about the labor market, stay optimistic about the economy. I really do believe anything is possible if you have clarity and then can put in the work to make whatever that clarity reveals possible. So stay optimistic.
Amazing. And I really love that. Thank you so much, Katie. So where can our audience find you? I'm very sure that a lot of people, would love to connect with you after this session and engage with your work. So please feel free to share that with us.
Yes. So folks can find me at my website, encouragecoaching.org. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Encourage Coach Chicago. And finally on LinkedIn at /Kate O'Malley. I was able to get my actual name because I signed up as soon as LinkedIn hit the 2008. So those are the main places that you can find me. You can also shoot me an email, katie@encouragecoaching.org.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's been fun having you on the show today. And listeners, I'm sure that you've been equipped with the right knowledge and skills you need to be able to make that pivot. Do not be afraid to make a change that you need to make. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And until I come your way again next time, keep thriving.